Hey everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel here where I talk about things in the gaming industry and all that stuff. I'm Eloy, and what some of you might have heard is that I am somewhat of a Kickstarter master. And it's honestly easy to kind of fall into this idea that, anybody can be a Kickstarter master, after they've done, I think I've done like 13 or 14 different Kickstarters, so it's easy to get that assumption. But it's interesting because what I found is that most things that have happened in my RPG career have been largely due to luck and not necessarily because, I know exactly what I'm doing all of the time. Now, Kickstarter is a really good example of that. So I was going to give you guys a little rundown on like how I got into doing Kickstarters and like how it kind of evolved into like Eloy is this huge expert about Kickstarters. And it's kind of funny the way that it all happened. To start, at the time, I was working on the very first edition of Part-Time Gods. So we're talking, I don't know, maybe 8, almost 9 years ago. And honestly, RPGs made just as much money back then as they have previously and currently do. Kickstarter did kind of open up that doorway for people to be able to kind of make money off of what they do. But it took a while before things started rolling. And I was like, I think I kind of want a new way to kind of get Part-Time Gods funded and everything. And Ninja Crusade, the first edition, was doing okay, but not necessarily like so good that it would fund a whole other game. So I had just previously backed a game called Doe, and it was written by Daniel Solis, and it was one of like the bigger games that was funded on Kickstarter. And I remember too, because I remember watching it, I'm like, first off, I was playing a lot of like Happy Birthday Robot at the time. And I was kind of looking at like, oh, Daniel, he's a good designer. I like his stuff. So I went and I looked and I was like, Doe, that sounds good. I'll back it. Because that's what this thing was. It was like, you give a little bit of money and if it funds, then you get the book. And I'm like, that's kind of a cool way to do it, and it's kind of built-in pre-sales, and that sounds really good. So when his got to almost $30,000, I was like, whoa. I was like, okay, maybe I can do that too. I was like, I'm not as well known. I didn't have like big names behind me or anything, but I was like, if he could jump on there and do it, I'm sure I could jump on there and get half of what he gets, a third. A quarter of what he got, I would have been happy with. So I got on there. I offered, physical copies. I offered like pre-gens, laminated. I bought myself a laminator and everything. And obviously the premium tier of like make up your own god for the book. And this was really my first foray into Kickstarter. Very, very weird. I didn't have any kind of stretch goals or anything in mind. I just was like, I just want to fund this book. Help me do that. And and it was fun. It was a really great experience. I think we ended up just over 8,000. So I think I took home, we ended up just over 8,000. So, they take their cut, and then I ended up just under 7,000 when all was said and done. But, it was good. It was really, really good. I enjoyed it. And what it did is I think I was like the third or like fourth game to really like use Kickstarter and show success doing it. And then I was like, well, then let's do it again. And let's do it again. And I have another thing, let's do it here. And every time that I was doing Kickstarter, I was kind of experimenting, seeing what worked, what didn't work. And because I would have, 2 to 3 Kickstarters a year for many, many years, it turned into that like Eloy knows what he's doing. He knows exactly how to do Kickstarters. But it's funny because if you look at my Kickstarters, like very seldom did they like go up. Like I didn't like the first one was 8,000, the next one was 12, and the next one was 15, and now I'm in like Monty Cook, territory. I'm making hundreds of thousands, and that's not happening. What I found honestly is that most of my games are so niche. And because I've done either the service or the disservice to myself of not really falling into any precise category, I could fund really well over here with this game, but then make a whole other game over here and it's not going to fund as well because it's completely different than the other game in subject matter, system, and everything. People don't know what they're going to get out of a game written by Eloy. So that's just how that works. Anybody who does follow me or knows anything about the work that I do, that's just the reality of following Eloy. You don't know what my next game is going to be unless I announce it or whatever, but you know what I mean. So every time I do a new Kickstarter, I'm always trying to evolve and I'm always trying to try new things. Some of them have failed, some of them not so much. Some of them have been really good successes, but they've all been successes within their own scope and not necessarily compared to what I see other people actually succeeding with, tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands sometimes, depending upon the game and the subject matter. What I found is that for me, as long as I can get the game funded, I'm good, right? I like making some money on top, but usually I end up pouring that into the game anyway because, I really care about making the game as good as it can be. And it is largely a passion thing for me. So, really, obviously I want to make as much money as I can on these Kickstarters, but if I get it funded, I'm good. But there's been a lot of varying changes over time. And what you would do when I started doing Kickstarter is not necessarily what is standard practice nowadays. And there's a bunch of different types of campaigns that you'll see happen, and I've seen it kind of go in a weird direction that is still mind-boggling. It's still weird, but is becoming more and more common. Back in the day, if you needed 8,000 to fund, you would set your goal for 8,000 because that's what you needed. And there weren't any stretch goals and there weren't any, other things. And shipping was a complete nightmare. But that's just what it was when they were starting. Over time, though, it's evolved into this thing where if you need 8,000, then you need to ask for 2,000. But you really still do need 8,000, but that's more for that initial marketing push. And then when you hit that 2,000, people are like, yay, we hit the goal. But then if you only reach, say, 6,000 for the goal, then the person running the Kickstarter cancels the Kickstarter because they really needed 8,000. I've seen a lot of people kind of becoming disillusioned to that type of way of doing it. And it's a very weird kind of hype-driven kind of way to do it. And I've done that. I've done some hype-driven ones as well. And some of them were some of my highest ones. But I've seen a lot of people start getting burned on the fact that people aren't asking for exactly what they need. Now, of course, being the Kickstarter master that I am, I still try to keep it as close to old school as possible. If I need 8,000, let's say, for instance, if I needed 8,000, I don't think any of my games need 8,000, but oh my God, if I had 8,000, I could make an amazing game. But if I need 8,000, I'll usually do something like I'll ask for 5. I'll ask for slightly less. Asking for 2,000 on that is that's hard. That's hard for me to do because it's oh, but if I fund, then I don't want to piss people off because they're thinking that, yay, we did it. But most of the games that I've been coming out with recently have been smaller games anyway. So I'm yeah, give me 2,000. I actually will make a game if you give me 2,000, and it works out. Now, the interesting thing about this is because of personal things, family things, business things, I actually have some Kickstarters outstanding, and that's honestly one of the big things that you want to steer clear of. Don't do what I did, is you promise a bunch and then it takes you forever to kind of release those things. We actually have a couple of books still due for Part-Time Gods, which actually are still being worked on. The Part-Time Gods Companion is almost done, being written, and then we'll be able to put that out. But Kid's Guide to Monster Hunting is a big one for the PIP system Kickstarter, and I had a healthy handful of people who wanted that book, but it's just fallen by the wayside. It fell through the cracks. We've been working on it a lot recently to get it out, but it's going to be, maybe 2 years later that these people are going to end up getting their book, and I'm sure they'll be happy to get the book. But, it's a lot of hassle for them to think that they've wasted their money. And us over here at Third Eye Games, we're still working. The quarantine, we haven't actually done anything for months now at this point. So we tried to do a Kickstarter. It was actually a little bit right before the pandemic hit for a game about, a half-eaten hamburger and some fries solving crime. That one was a weird one because we put it up there and we got a couple of people who really wanted something like that. I think that game is going to really serve itself better as maybe a free or a really reduced price game. But what we were hoping to do was to take this little game, kind of like what I said earlier, take this little game and pump some money into it and actually make it a big thing. That was going to be really cool. But what I've been doing right now, probably over the last couple of years, is just kind of cleaning up the backlog of Kickstarters that are owed before I actually start any new ones. So is that something that a Kickstarter master would say? Probably not. It's weird. I do know a lot about Kickstarter. I'm not going to downplay that I've messed around with Kickstarter a lot. They've made a lot of important strides, but the customer base and the approach to Kickstarter has definitely changed over the years. So I don't know if I'm a Kickstarter master anymore. It's kind of like if you're like a master scientist in this field, but then somebody comes up and it's just like, well, actually, I'm going to challenge your theory and I have this better theory. And now you're like, well, I was the master of this thing that is now kind of obsolete. So I'm a master of Kickstarter 4 years ago. Now, luckily, I have people on my team who actually come in and do know more about Kickstarter and stuff, and they've been helping me with like some of the latest ones that we've been doing. So that's good because I'm running off of old information. But Kickstarter is fun in the end. I really enjoy it. Hopefully Kickstarter doesn't like go the way of the dinosaur. I know that a lot of people are kind of moving to different, I know that some people are moving to like different platforms and trying out different types of stores to see, where their stuff can fare a little bit better. And, Third Eye Games is going to end up trying some of that. But yeah, we're here. We're still here, Third Eye Games, and we're going to keep trucking along. And hopefully we get the next Kickstarter out before the end of the year. And that, of course, is contingent on us finishing up some of those backlog projects. But Kickstarter Master? I don't know. We'll have to see. Anyway, thank you guys for coming and checking us out. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you always know when Eloy puts up a new video. Otherwise, thanks for coming and hearing me rambling. See you later.